Okay. So that idea of the present moment, we were talking about the extended, organic, alive, never ending, flowing present moment. You can bring that into this practice anytime you want. As we start to focus on the breath, say, maybe finding the breath in the belly. And we're letting the breath come in and we're letting it go out in its own time without any effort to control it. I like to use the idea of waiting for the breath. Wait for the breath to come in. Wait for the breath to go out. Just as if you're sitting on a beach watching the waves. You can't control them. You don't need to control them. There'll be a period where there's a lot of waves right after the other, and then there'll be a period where the ocean gets quiet and it takes a while for the next wave to come in. It's all fine. How present can you be with your breath? Let go of the idea of what you think it means to be present with your breath and tune into what it's like to experience the present moment of the breath. It may not be what you think it is. To truly experience the present moment of the breath, you have to be allowing the breath to come in exactly as it wants to, meaning you're not in any way looking towards a future where the breath is different than it is now. And you have to let it go away exactly as it wants to, meaning you're not holding on at all. You're willing to totally let go of the breath. So you're totally accepting of the breath coming in, and you're totally willing to let go of the breath. And by let go, I don't even mean just the exhale. I mean, you're willing to let go of the breath as it's happening. The in-breath, you're letting go of it as it comes in. To help your concentration, if you're needing it, you can use a label like breath or feel or in and out. Feel, feel, feel. But the label happens in response to the actual feeling or breath. And the label also happens in the present moment. And any distraction happens in the present moment, and you can let it come up and let it fall away. Ultimately, the most important ones here are emotional distractions, because those are the ones that are controlling our attention. So when we notice an emotional distraction, we're not trying to get rid of it. We're letting it come in. Oh, this is a yucky feeling. That would make me want to think about something and fix something. And then we let it, we're willing to let it play out, let it go. Doesn't mean get rid of it. It means let it, stop holding on to it. Stop trying to control it. Stop trying to avoid the feeling. Stop trying to get rid of the feeling. Stop trying to feel the feeling. And you use once you've sort of acknowledged the distraction, you let yourself go back to the breath. Feel. Feel. Start to notice the seamlessness of the present moment. We can actually allow the present moment to settle our concentration in on our object. Because what we're ultimately practicing in mindfulness is this honey-like attention, where our attention just drips slowly like honey across the moments. As the breath comes in like honey, we follow it all the way to the top. As the breath goes out, we like honey follow it up. There's no break, right, in the flow of our attention. And our attention gets more and more viscous as it attaches to the object of our meditation. Remembering the present moment is alive. What is aliveness? Well, aliveness is not predictable. Aliveness is not known. It's alive. Anything could happen. So the breath is alive. What does it look like right now? How is it growing right now? What is its manifestation right this second? Just like ocean waves. Always new, always different. So at this point, if you find yourself getting distracted by something, there's an emotion that's persistent, or thoughts, noisy mind, or some external sound, really invite you to take a little time and just sit with that part of your experience. If your mind is really noisy, then sit back and just listen to the sound of the music of the mind in the present moment. It is also a flowing music. If there's feeling in the body that is distracting you, physical or emotional, give it a little time right now. In the present moment, how is it now? Not how we're worried about it's going to keep going, or how it's always been here and it's annoying. What is it right now? Again, allow the honey-like quality of attention to apply to even the noisy mind. If you're not finding yourself distracted, go deeper and deeper into the breath. Deeper and deeper just means more and more into the aliveness, letting go of the deadness. That is letting go of more and more ideas about what the breath is like or what meditation is supposed to be like, and going more and more into the actual mystery of the breath. When it's fully alive, when you look at it fully without obstruction, it's a complete mystery what is happening. So this is a perfectly good place to stay. I'm going to give you one pointer, and then we'll go into a slightly different technique. But you don't have to listen to anything else I say. You could continue just coming back to your breath. You could continue alternating between your breath and any distraction you have. You could move your attention to something that's more resourceful for you. If there's something that's more relaxing or pleasant, that's totally fine. I just want to remind you of one thing. Ultimately, in the present moment, there isn't a person watching the present moment and then the present moment. There is just the present moment. Another way of putting it, there's not a person standing on the banks of the river watching the river go by. There is just the river. Now, when we do a practice like we're focusing on the breath, then we've sort of carved up reality into breath and not breath. But that's an illusion. Ultimately, there is just the breath, but the breath has no boundaries, right? The breath is your whole body, your whole mind, your whole thoughts, your whole feelings, the whole world. It's seamless with everything else. The river is seamless with the river. And the metaphor breaks down because there's no banks to this river. There's nothing but the river. So when we are following the breath, we are ultimately the breath. And nothing else. And everything else. So again, that may have put you in a connection with your breath that's working for you. You can just stay there. And if you want to go into this a little bit more technique, what I want you to do is just keep your attention on the breath. And we're going to use a technique to start to show ourselves that there's just the river, right? That there's just the breath. We're going to notice the breath, but I also want you to notice who is noticing the breath at the same time. So you're noticing what you're attending to, the breath, and you're noticing the attender, the one that is attending to the breath. Now, you're still not doing the breath. The breath is doing itself. The breath breathes itself. Likewise, the attender, you'll start to notice the attender attends by itself, doesn't actually require you. So this is a little bit more challenging for our concentration. I'm asking you to expand and now include two things: the thing that's being observed, the breath, and the observer. Where are these two things? That is, where is the breath and where is the observer of the breath? How is it possible to observe them both at the same time? It's only possible because they both are arising in the space of awareness. So there's awareness. Inside of awareness is the breath. Inside of awareness is that which we think is observing the breath. By the way, the same applies if you're attending to your thoughts or you're attending to your feelings. There are the feelings, and then there's the observer of the feelings. And both of them are arising in awareness. You're aware of both of them. So wisdom here in this practice is noticing if you're losing your concentration and go back to the practice that gets you back into concentration. And then expanding into the more advanced practice as it feels available to you. That doesn't mean you can't try the more advanced, you should. Even if you're not feeling concentrated, you can notice, because sometimes you can jump right over into a deeper concentrated state by going, oh, the observer is right there. So can you notice the breath and then the observer of the breath? And notice that they're both arising in awareness. And then, of course, there's a little piece of logic here, which you might notice as well, that if you can notice the observer of the breath arising in awareness, then you are not the observer of the breath. There is an observer, there's an idea of an observer, there's a story about somebody that's watching the breath, but that somebody is arising in awareness. It's just it's no more you than any other part of awareness. Let's put it that way, right? There's only the river. And that river contains all the things we like to name, and it contains the breath, contains the feelings, contains the thoughts, it contains the observer of the breath, the feelings, and the thoughts. And the idea that any of those things are separate from each other is just another idea. And remind you just to let go of any ideas of good and bad here, or notice that if they're arising in the mind or in the feelings, that they are just another thing that can be observed. You're not doing a good job of meditation. You're not doing a bad job of meditation. You're a living, breathing, present moment. That's what you are. Now, there's a way that you can do this where the observer's concentration on the breath becomes really powerful, and you are also not identified with the observer. That is, the observer gets so quiet because it no longer is you doing it. You can just let it calm down. And now, just in awareness, the breath arises. You are no longer the observer of the breath. You are not breathing the breath. The breath breathes itself. The universe breathes itself. The present moment continues to flow into itself. It doesn't go anywhere else. So continue with that practice. I'm just going to talk a little bit more mundanely about the breath and the body. As I do that, though, you just keep tuning into the breath and the observer of the breath. And then awareness that contains them both. But I want your body to remember that as the breath breathes out, the body relaxes. As the breath breathes out, the body relaxes. It lets go. There's a gravity to relaxation. That is, as you breathe out, you sink deeper into the floor. Muscular tension lets go. And the forehead and the jaw, chest and the shoulders, the belly. And ultimately, what we're dropping into, that is, as we breathe out, we relax, but so does a tension. The observer starts to relax. And eventually, what we're resting on, the body is resting on the ground. And it's sort of like every part of the body is resting on the ground, right? Because it's stacked on top of itself. So it's all hanging and held by the ground. But the same thing is true of everything else in experience. It's resting on awareness. And you don't have to hold it up. You don't have to control it or keep making it happen. You can just let all of experience rest on awareness, on the ground of awareness. Eventually, you can let it rest on the ground of awareness, and it stops being separate. It just sort of sinks into and merges with the ground of awareness. Anything, it doesn't matter how fast it's moving or how tense it seems, is in awareness, and you can just let it drop into awareness. You can just let it sink into and sit on top of awareness. As you do this, you're letting the breath come in when it wants to. You're letting it go out when it wants to. As it comes in and as it goes out, it starts to relax the body and drop deeper and deeper. Your awareness starts to drop deeper and deeper. And everything in experience, anything that might arise, sits on top of that awareness, starts to sink and let go into awareness. For now, you can think of this as a up and down kind of orientation, as if awareness is underneath all of experience. That's fine. Ultimately, it's more mysterious than that. But every sound, every color, every feeling that arises sits on top of awareness. It's held by it, supported by it, and requires you to, you can just let it go. Because it will be caught by awareness. It won't be caught by knowledge. It won't be caught by the mind. It won't be caught by thought. It'll be caught by awareness. So this thing I've been describing here at the end is really another way of tying into just doing nothing. So let's really add that instruction for the last minute, just letting go of any effort. Awareness can do awareness. It requires absolutely nothing from you. You no longer need to control your attention. You don't need to think of any metaphors. Just let your mind, let your heart, let your gut, let your body, let your attention do what it wants. Just like we let the breath come in and out, we let everything arise and fall how it wants to. Choiceless awareness. Not making any choices. Letting awareness choose for itself. Okay. As you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the room, and we will have a little discussion.